Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series, Interviews with Disciples and Devotees. Today I'm very happy to introduce you to Shivani Sharma from Bombay, and we have actually met a few times. So I usually begin by asking about your family and also about your first contact with Sri Aurobindo and Mother. So please be as thorough as you like.
Okay. Namaste. I'm Shivani, and I was lucky enough to have Mother and Sri Aurobindo be a part of my life since I can remember, because my grandparents from my maternal side, my Nani Ma and my Nanu, my maternal grandparents, they have the utmost faith in the Mother and Sri Aurobindo. And so my mother got it from them, and I got it from my mother. But growing up, I think I came to Pondi for the first time when I was 3 or 4 years old. And I kept coming after that. But when I was a child, I didn't feel that instant connection with the Mother. It wasn't something that I could really feel. It was, you know how my Nani would always say, if there was ever a problem, or I was going through something, or if I had an exam, or if it was my birthday, she would be, write a letter to the Mother. Write a letter to the Mother. Anything, write a letter to the Mother. And my Nani Ma would always tell me that. So I would write those letters, even though it wasn't something that was coming from within, from my own choice.
But you were very young.
I was really small, right? So I did what I was told. And my mom also, she'd always tell me, like, every birthday, it's a ritual to write a letter to the Mother. It's one of the first things I do. Once I wake up, I take my shower, and it's something I've been doing since I was a child. So, yeah, and
And this went on for how many years?
It's still going on.
Throughout your childhood?
Yes, throughout my childhood. And my Nani Ma, she would always say, if I had an exam, and I used to be really nervous, right? I used to be anxious before my exams. She would say, before you begin your paper, you stay quiet for a few minutes, if you have to, and you call her down, you ask her to come sit with you, write the exam with you. And I would do these things. But again, these were things that she would guide me to do them, and I would do them. But I would still not feel like this is something, it wasn't my natural instinct to ask the Mother for help.
You were
as
just
a child.
obeying your mother?
Yes.
Basically.
Basically. My mother and my grandmother.
And your grandmother.
So everything I've said so far is about my grandmother. She would keep telling me, my maternal grandmother. So she passed away in January this year. And
how old was she?
She was 75. Not that old.
No.
But yes. So one thing she would always do is write letters to the Mother even on our birthdays. So she would not only tell us to do that, she would do it herself for everybody around her. So if it was like anyone in the family, she would write a letter for them to the Mother.
Did she meet Mother?
No, she did not.
And your grandmother?
No, she did not. So after she passed in Jan, I have now taken that up. So whenever it's a member of my family's birthday, I now write letters. Because I feel like, that extra wish or that feeling that she had, just as a well-wisher, should continue. I just can't let that go just because she isn't here with us. She would have still wanted those wishes to still go in their accounts. So that is something I've now begun doing after her passing. And yes, so throughout my childhood, it was like that. And then, so I used to live in Bombay, and then I moved to Calcutta when I was in the 5th grade. And that was like a brief period of, issues going on in the family. My parents had briefly separated at the time. And so my mom, my brother, and I, we moved to Calcutta in the middle of the academic year. So it was quite a sudden uprooting feeling.
Your father was not interested so much
No.
in the yoga?
No.
In any yoga?
No, not so much. So,
So you moved to Calcutta, you had a place,
yes,
family?
yes. So my maternal grandparents lived in Calcutta, and my father, he also had another flat in Calcutta, which is where we lived, the three of us, my mom, my brother, and I. So after moving, I was quite disturbed for a while, but it was very internal. I was always a happy child externally, but internally I was quite detached. I just didn't feel that connection with anybody around me. And
But it was there with your mother?
yes,
Always?
always. But yes, you know how teenagers are after, when I became, when I had like that period when I thought that only I knew what's best and nobody could tell me what to do. So that was like a brief period of thinking where my mother didn't know better. I knew it all. But of course now I know better than that now. But during that whole time, my mom would keep trying to direct me towards the mother, and I would just be repulsed constantly. I now realize that I just wasn't in the space to receive help. I was unwilling to get better, I think. Or maybe I didn't want to address the feelings that I was feeling. And I knew if it meant, turning towards the mother, it meant healing. It meant light and healing, which maybe I wasn't ready for at the time. And I was very, extremely unwilling. And then my grandmother at the time, she would tell me, tell the mother to make it okay. You tell her that whatever issues your parents are going through, tell her to make it okay. And so I would. Just because she told me, I would go to the mother and I would tell her. I would go to the Bhavan in Calcutta. It's very close to my house, Aurobindo Bhavan. Just about 300-400 meters from my house where I would live in Calcutta. So you could actually see the Bhavan from my window.
Ah.
Yeah. So New Year's we would go for meditation before any exam. Otherwise I would go to the Bhavan quite frequently.
So how old were you at this time?
When we moved, I was 10, about to be 11. And I was there till the age of 16, I think. I was there till I was 16.
What did you do in the realm of art or music?
I really enjoyed painting. Really, really enjoyed painting. And that is one of the things that I could just go on and on. There was no time when I would paint. Sometimes I would paint 7-8 hours at a stretch without realizing that it's so much time has passed. I would not feel the need to drink water. I would not feel the need to use the restroom. I would just be there. There were times I painted overnight and watch the sun go up, but not realize the passage of time. So painting was really the sacred thing for me.
Shivani, what did you paint? What kind of subjects?
There would be faces, but not, somehow the faces wouldn't have all features. So sometimes, like if I'd paint a face, the mouth would be missing, sometimes the eyes would be missing, sometimes the nose would be missing. And I really didn't know where this was coming from. I would just paint as I would feel. I would not think too much. And I had an art teacher who would come home and guide me. And then I would just begin with him, and then he would leave. And the next day, the painting would be ready. You know, we'd plan it like, oh, it's probably going to take us a week to complete this. And he would come back the next day, and the painting would be complete. So he himself used to be startled. He's like, this is not what you said you envisioned. Like, it's very different from how we discussed. And he was very, very supportive, very encouraging too. You know, like he would encourage me to explore my mind and never give too many inputs of his own. So if I had something I was visualizing, he would ask me questions about it rather than suggest that, oh, maybe you could do it like this or like that. He would ask me more questions so I would get the answers myself and get more clarity myself. And yeah, painting was quite a sacred thing for me. Although, like, I haven't painted in a really long time now. I don't know when I stopped and how I stopped. But I write now. I write more than I paint. So writing is also something I've been doing since I was very young. And that is something that stayed. Like, that didn't stop. It stayed.
Well, first it was the letters to mother.
Yes.
And you had to write those.
Exactly. And I think that, you know, as a kid, you don't know how to ask for things or like, what is it that I really want, you know? But when I would write those letters, it would just flow seamlessly. The letters would just flow seamlessly. Like, I suddenly knew what I had to write. Like, I didn't know until the pen had touched the paper.
Have you kept them?
No, I would post them to Pondi actually.
Ah.
So, and it was a really fun thing for me to do. The posting part, just the idea that I'm addressing the letter to the mother, Sri Aurobindo Ashram, Pondicherry, I loved doing that. And I would just feel like, oh, now this letter is going to go and sit where the mother is right now. So she's actually going to receive this letter physically. And just that would be so beautiful. So as I was telling you earlier, that my nani would say, ask the mother for help, right? Tell her to make it okay.
You're in your mid-teens at this point?
Yes, mid-teens. So this one time I was at the Bhavan in Calcutta and I was meditating. I must have been like 14 years old. 14 or 15, yeah. And I was meditating. And before I began my meditation, I did put in a word with the mother that my nani said that I should tell you to make it okay. I always, like, my conversations with the mother, I feel, have always been, the way I speak to her has always been like a friend. I always speak to her like I would speak to a friend. That is the language I use with her. I really don't feel like I have to, like, you know, make my words perfect before I speak to her. Just as I feel them, I say them. And then if I feel like, oh, that's not what I meant actually, this is what I meant, I correct myself immediately. But I feel comfortable doing that.
Did you also feel her as a mother?
As a young girl, no. As a young girl, I did not feel that way. It came later. It did. But yes, so I was meditating after I'd put in the word. And what I then thought was a dream, I had this vision of the mother sitting on a park bench with like trees everywhere. There was so many trees. It was super green. And I was lying on that bench with my head resting on her lap,
On mother's lap.
on the mother's lap. And her hand was on my head. She was like caressing my hair like that. And she said, "It's going to be okay." She said those words. Now, this had just happened when I was at the Bhavan. The next day or sometime later that week, I met my grandmother and I told her that I had a dream in the ashram, because that's what I thought it was, a dream. That the mother said, she said that it would be okay. And today I realized that that was such a special thing, but in that moment I didn't treat it as something so special. I didn't realize the gravity of what had just happened at all. I felt like this must have happened to everybody at some point, you know. Anyone who's praying to the mother would probably feel like, you know, if you tell her that please make it okay, she would tell you that it will be okay. So I told my grandmother like it was nothing, like it was no big deal, you know. The mother said it will be okay. You know, and she was sitting on a bench and I was resting on her lap and she said it would be okay. And my grandmother was like, "What? She said that? Did this really happen?" And she was ecstatic. My grandmother was ecstatic.
Wow. Why, may I ask, were they telling you that it should be okay, that you would be okay? Your grandmother, your mother, you had problems?
So what my grandmother was telling me to ask her to make it okay, was because my parents were briefly separated. So my grandmother would be like, you should tell her to like make things okay between them.
Between them.
Between them.
Okay, very good.
And so I would. And that's why it felt a little impersonal, because it wasn't about me. I was like asking for my grandmother, for my parents. So it was like I was delivering this message to the mother. And that's what it felt like when I told my grandmother that she said this. I felt like I was delivering the message for her, because I wasn't as ecstatic as she was. Ideally, I should have felt like, oh wow, the mother came and, you know, she told me this. But I didn't feel like that. She did. So I feel like at that time I was probably maybe just a messenger for my nani, or like her wish was that her daughter and her son-in-law would get back together and sort out their problems. So maybe I was just a little messenger as a 14-year-old for her to the mother.
But you're still very young.
I am.
Of course.
Of course. But this was when I was 14, right? And a few years later, like 2 years later, we moved back to Bombay. And things were actually better. And I didn't feel like coming back to Bombay, to be very honest, because I just begun to get comfortable in Calcutta, you know, and now I'm like, are you telling me to move back again? You know, how am I supposed to do that?
Of course, you had your painting teacher and...
Yes, I had a life in Calcutta.
A life, yes.
And I was quite unwilling to come back, but I just let it be. And the first night when I came back to Bombay, I asked my mother, how did you do it? All of those years in Calcutta, you left from Bombay one day. You just decided to leave with your two very small children. I have a younger brother. He was just, I think, about 4 years old at the time when we left. So I asked her, how did you do it? You know, you had no plan. You had no money of your own. Like, what were you thinking would happen? How were you going to make it work? She said, I didn't have a plan, but I just knew I had to leave. And I was so sure that like I had never been that sure in my life before. She said, I just felt like I had to leave, so I left. And every day after that, I would just ask the mother to help me get through the next day. She said, I wouldn't think about the next week even. I wouldn't think about how I'm going to spend these next years. I didn't know how long I was going to be here. I didn't have any idea of how I was going to do it. She said, just every single day in the morning and before sleeping, I would tell her, just help me get through this day and help me get through the next day. And I don't know what to do. You tell me what to do, and I will do it. You show me how to be, and I will be like that. Yeah. And I got admission midterm in the best school in Calcutta, which was the second best in India at the time. They never have a vacancy. And they don't take people midterm. But it just so happened that one girl, her father was in the army, so she transferred middle of the year, just before I made an application. I sat for the entrance exams, and 2 months later, I was studying in that school. And
So you were happy there.
yeah.
And not happy to go back.
Yeah. So, and then when I went back and then I asked my mother this, it took me some time to settle back in, but I was fine. But I realized that there were many issues that were like pent up internally. And I started going through a lot of personal problems. Like I was anxious all the time, just constantly anxious. I moved to college to Pune after being in Bombay. And then I was diagnosed with OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. And it was a very difficult time. Like it used to be just hard to get through the day even. And since now I was really far away from my yoga teacher, which is Miss Anayata Sanjana, whenever I would come to Bombay, I would do a class with her. And she would always invite me. She would always say, like, you don't worry about anything. If you're in town, you come to class. And every time I would go to class, it would be just everything I needed at the time. Just everything I needed. But I would find it really hard to take that back home and stay consistent in my yoga, especially in Pune. You know, in college, there's like assignments that are expected from you. And I was already struggling so much internally that, you know, I would have trouble even getting up and take a shower. Like that used to feel like work. My meal times were just haywire. Then I was later prescribed medication. I took medication for my OCD for a while.
Anxiety.
Anxiety and for OCD, my obsessive compulsive disorder. Now, I was on those medications for like, I think 2 years, which is a very long time to stay on a particular medication for a person my age. Or anybody, actually.
Were there serious side effects?
Yes. I think what really happened with time was that I became numb. So usually I wear my heart on my sleeve. That's how I've been my whole life. So if I'm sad, you'll know I'm sad. If I'm happy, you'll know I'm happy. And suddenly I was not feeling happy or sad, but not in a neutral, calm way, in an indifferent way where I felt like an alien almost all the time. I felt like a rock, you know, like just...
Do you feel it was partly because of the drugs?
It was 100% because of the drugs.
Okay.
Because while I had my OCD, I would have moments of extreme anxiety or extreme depression. But I realized with time, I was like, I would rather feel absolutely miserable than feel nothing at all. So I cannot have these medicines. I just decided one day that I don't want to have these medicines. And I went and told my mom, I was like, I don't think this is the line of treatment I would like to follow anymore. I would like to stop. And she was quite supportive. She said, of course, whatever you need, whatever you think you need. And I stopped. But of course, then all the feelings started resurfacing, everything that was being suppressed. Because we all know how medication works, right? It hardly ever cures anything. It's always just suppressing it into deeper layers. And all of these emotions started to resurface. And
Were you still writing to mother?
it was less frequent. I had become very distant, I feel like, from the mother at the time. Because I was away from home and my mom wasn't there to tell me all the time that write a letter to the mother or ask her for help. And I wouldn't do it unless she asked. So what happened is during the lockdown, after this whole medication thing happened, I graduated from college and then I moved back to Bombay from Pune. I was quite uncomfortable the first couple of months being in Bombay as well. And then it was literally like something shifted overnight. Like just a switch turned off. I woke up one day and I just told my mom, I was like, I don't want to feel like this anymore. I don't know where that came from. Maybe I do. But I had decided that I didn't want to feel bad anymore. I did not want to feel uncomfortable. I did not want to feel anxious. So now all of those years, of course, it wasn't something I wanted to feel. I just wasn't willing to let go. Because sometimes what happens, right, when you're depressed or when you're in that kind of a state of mind, you get comfortable in that state. That's what happened with me. I became comfortable, like I was hiding behind that pain. And I grew almost fond of it. Like, that was like my... That's just how it was. And that one day when I realized, I just felt like, I don't want to feel this way and I actually don't want to feel this way. Not just this moment. It's not just in this moment that I don't want to feel like this. I don't want to feel like this today and I don't want to feel like this tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that. And it's like I just knew that I had to begin my yoga practice again. I just knew it. The next day I started my own yoga practice, like asana practice. Then I would start classes with Miss Sanjana again. And suddenly, I couldn't recognize the girl from last month. Who was she and how did I allow myself to live like that for so many years? Is how quickly life had changed. And I hadn't been to Pondi in a couple of years at that time. And my mother hadn't been to Pondi in 10 years at that time. This was in December 2023. I told my mother that I have made enough excuses or accepted enough excuses to not go to Pondi. Because it just seems like on the surface level something more important has come up. But how could anything be more important than coming to Pondi? So I just told her that I'm going to Pondi and you are coming with me. I'm informing you this.
Whoa.
We are going to make the tickets soon. You tell me which dates are comfortable with you and we will go. And she said, okay. My brother's CA exam was getting over on the 6th of January. She said, we can leave after that, anytime after that. Initially, she was a bit hesitant, but then I said, I'm not taking no for an answer.
What year are we talking about?
2023, December.
Whoa.
I told her this. In December, I told her that, okay, if his exams get over on the 6th, on the 7th, we leave. We leave from Bombay and we go to Pondi. She said, I can only stay a few days. I said, okay, but I cannot only stay a few days. I have to stay longer. Because I haven't been to Pondi in 2-3 years. I hadn't been at the time. And I said that I have to make up for all this lost time. All this time that I was disconnected from the mother. I did not recognize or accept her help. I was unwilling, and now I have to make up for everything. I cannot I cannot go to Pondi for just 3 or 4 days. That will just not fill my cup. It will not be enough. So I stayed a month. That is the longest I had ever stayed in Pondi. Alone. My mom came and she left. And then I carried on for another 30 days. I was in Pondi for 35 days last year in January. And that is when I learned so much. That time in Pondi is when I feel like I really actually opened up like a flower. Like I was just this bud who was just not willing to face the sun, you know? Like I just didn't want to turn to the sun. And coming to Pondi last year felt like I had now turned to the sun. And I'm ready to like my petals are ready to open up. And that's how I was feeling constantly. That every day I would just tell her, I would go to the Samadhi morning and evening. I would sit there for like about 2 hours each. I just wouldn't want to leave from the Samadhi. It would just feel like, I still feel like that. You know, every time I go to the Samadhi in the morning, I have to go to, I leave for the dining room from the Samadhi itself. I volunteer at the dining every day during lunchtime. So even though I know I'm going to the dining and I love going to the dining room, I feel like, okay, 5 minutes more, just a little more time here. I don't want to leave. That's how I feel when I'm at the Samadhi. So I began to feel this way last year for the first time. And I came here with no plan. You know, I didn't know how my day would be or what I would do for so many days. I didn't know what I would do.
Did you have any experiences?
Yes, I did. So, yes, I can. So I was sitting in the Samadhi one day, and this was again before I had to go to the dining. So it was about, I'd say, 10:30 in the morning. 11:15 is when I want to reach the dining room. So I was just sitting quietly at the Samadhi, and I asked Sri Aurobindo, my question was directed to Sri Aurobindo. And I asked him that, am I making any progress? You know, I asked him, I have been here for now 2 weeks. I was telling him this. Like, I've been here for about 2-3 weeks, and it still takes me a few minutes to gather myself. Am I really making any progress?
Were you at the Samadhi?
I was at the Samadhi. And I was sitting, how do I say? I can't really explain. Behind the service tree, you know, the whole passage, the balcony, over there. I was sitting there. And I just asked him this question. And I just kind of left it. I said, you know, I've been here a while and I just really want to know if I'm making any progress. And if I'm not, then direct me in the way that will, help me make this progress. because maybe I'm doing something wrong, or maybe there's something I don't see. So just show me the way. And I asked him this question, and I started walking out. And usually when I'm leaving the samadhi, I spend about 5-10 minutes just looking at the flowers, because the flowers in the samadhi are just like special, like I can't really put it in words. There's no other place that I've experienced flowers like that. So I usually always stay back and, spend some time with the flowers and just greet them and ask them about their morning. So that's what I was doing. And I looked at the ground and I was just seeing if there was a fallen flower or a leaf that I could pick up and take with me to put in my journal. Because for some reason I just felt like that day was very special. So I wanted to keep something from the samadhi from that day. But then I thought to myself, no, I must not take anything from the samadhi. It's not mine to take. I'm not going to pick anything up out of its place from here. And I started walking out. Now, the person who takes care of the flowers in the samadhi, he was trimming them. He was pruning the flowers. And he stopped me. I was just leaving, and this was our first communication. Like he said, "Excuse me," and I wasn't sure if he was talking to me. I stopped, and yes. He said, he held a bunch of white periwinkles that he had just trimmed. He offered them to me, and he said, "Would you like some progress grown in a special place?" And when he said that first, I said, "Excuse me? I'm not sure I heard you right." Then he said it again, "Would you like some progress grown in a special place?" Now, the mother has named the periwinkle flower Progress.
And the white, integral progress.
Yes, yes. And here I was thinking that I want to take one flower or one leaf, and I've been handed a bunch without asking. And literally about 15 minutes after I asked this question inside, it wasn't like this happened a week later or 10 days later. It happened 15 minutes after I asked this question. And of course, that day, I feel like something really did open up very evidently in me, because then I stopped questioning anything. Like after that, when I come to the samadhi in the morning itself, like I don't ask for things for me anymore. I'm like, oh, I would like this, or I feel like I want to grow in my consciousness, I want to be better. I just go every day and I tell her to simply guide me in the direction that's meant for me, make me realize what I'm meant to realize, help my day go the way it's meant to go, and just leave it at that and not decide too many things for the way I think they should be. Earlier, even if the questions would be, I would like to find that inner stillness or maintain the stillness after finding it. I don't ask that anymore. I just leave it on her. I tell her that if you think that this is something I need, then make it happen. Because, very often we wish for things that may seem like they're meant for us, even if it's in your own spiritual growth. It may not seem so personal. I realized later that I was still asking for those things for me, for my ego. It was at some point coming from my ego, that I want to grow in my consciousness. There was this desperation in that. this desire. That I realized that the desire to grow in your consciousness is still a desire. And then I had to change my tone and my way of asking. And that happened after that out-of-body conference that I attended on the 28th of January last year.
Did you go out of your body at any time?
I did not. I have not yet. But that day I learned so much about changing the tone of my questions, and the subtlety that needs to be there when you're asking, and not that desperation, that this lightness. And after that, I feel like the growth was super rapid. Like every day I would feel like I have changed. Every day would feel like I'm different from what I was yesterday. Every single day, like there was growth left, right, and center. And I simply had to change the way I was asking my questions or addressing the mother in Sri Aurobindo. And yeah, it's just been incredible.
Tell me what you're reading in Mother and Sri Aurobindo.
So,
what have you opened to in their words?
So I haven't read so much of their work actually. While I've been in Pondi, I was reading Our Many Selves. And I do go for Savitri classes in Bombay with Miss Sanjana on Saturdays. I'm not there every week, but I try to be there as much as I can. And like even when I came to Pondi, I had a lot of questions, but that's the thing. So this is one very interesting thing. When I came to Pondi last year, I didn't know what my questions were, but I knew the answers were in Pondi. I couldn't frame my questions. I knew that there were just the answers were here. So even my day would align itself automatically, and then that formed a routine. So I didn't have a routine my whole life. I struggled with routine. My days have always been erratic. No fixed timing to wake up, no fixed time for meals, no fixed time for work or for sleep. But when I came to Pondi last year is when I found routine for the first time. And it wasn't something I actively did or worked towards. Things just aligned themselves a certain way. Where suddenly I was waking up every day at the same time. And initially I would struggle with waking up early. So I would tell her that, I struggle with waking up early in the morning, like that's a problem I have. And I know that once I'm awake, it's okay. But that moment of like making that decision that, I can get up. That moment is when I fall weak. So I told her to give me strength in that moment. To not say no in that moment and actually be like, my eyes have opened, I'm ready for the day. So I told her, just push me to just find that strength to not go back to sleep. Waking up suddenly became effortless. Like I would open my eyes and just be ready, like, okay, yeah, I'm ready for the day, like it's time. No, going back to sleep wasn't even a question. And I couldn't do this my whole life, just suddenly I was able to do this because I simply asked for help, which earlier I would only do when I was told. But so that transformation took many, many years, from my mom and my grandmother guiding me in her direction, and then Miss Sanjana coming into my life and then showing me what it really feels like to love the mother. And for that feeling to come from within and not because somebody asks you to. You know, when you would chant Anandmayi, Chaitanyamayi, Satyamayi, Parame, it's still my favorite chant. I feel like it's something when I don't know how to, if my mind is going in 12 directions, or if there's too many thoughts flowing and I just want to feel calm, my mind goes like on autopilot, starts Om Anandmayi Chaitanyamayi Satyamayi. Like it just goes to autopilot. Like that is now it's like I don't have to nudge that switch to go on. It just goes on. And then I'm calm again and like, okay, now let's like move on with the next.
It is your Nama Japa.
It really is.
Yes.
That's exactly what it is. I actually even have it tattooed on my arm.
Ah.
But yeah, so that is something I found with Miss Sanjana later. So I feel like mother has her ways. She must have realized that this girl is really stubborn, and I've been trying to get to her, but she just wouldn't listen. Through her mother, through her grandmother, but she's not listening. So she like came the other way from my teacher. Like maybe this way she'll understand. And that's what happened.
I want to ask you if you have met any of the older ashramites, or who you have met here that has been interesting to you.
Okay. I haven't met any of the older ashramites, and even if I have, I must have been really small.
When you came.
Yeah, so I don't really have a memory. But I think Shraddhalu is a really, really special person. I always felt drawn to him even when I was smaller. So he happens to know my grandparents as well. So I had been coming and meeting him during my Pondi visits, even when it wasn't from school. So we would go to Panditji's house, and I was really small this one time, and he did some magic tricks, right? With the coin. And I refused to believe that those were tricks. I just don't like the word trick. It's magic. I just refused to believe that I was being tricked at all, because I felt it. I was like, there is something here. And from back then till now, I've always felt like there's some connection that I have with him. And it really does always feel like words are, I can't really formulate a sentence right now, but
You don't have to. He's my best friend.
you get it.
How long will you be staying here now? You said you're leaving very, very soon.
Yeah, I'm leaving on the 29th, which is in 3 days. And I've been here though since the 10th of March. So now it's been 46 days since I've been here. And this time around, I didn't come alone. I came with my Nanu, who's my mother's father, and my other Nanu, who's my mother's uncle. So my mother's uncle is the one who brought my Nanu to Pondi for the first time. And he has in fact met the mother when he was very young, quite a few times. And in fact, even when he got married, before he got married, he had brought a picture of my Nani, my mom's aunt, to get, an approval from the mother. And she approved of the marriage. And that's when they got married. And so I'm here this time with the two of them. And that has been quite a journey. It's been quite different from my other trips here, because usually I'm either with, other people from my yoga group, or people from the Savitri classes, or alone. But this time I was here with my two grandfathers. And it was so beautiful because they had stories to tell me from when they would come here, when they were younger. And
And they both met mother.
no, not the both of them. Only my mom's uncle has met the mother.
But they came last night. I met them last night.
Yes, you did.
Yes, wonderful.
Um, so yeah, this trip has been very different. I've learned a lot of new things. So I realized last year that it is quite difficult to take back what you gather here to Bombay, to a place like Bombay, which is really loud and fast. And I live in a joint family, so there's so many opinions, so many people, and so many different kinds of energies and conversations that a lot of things get scattered. A lot of what you've collected gets scattered. I mean, that's what happens with me. And I was keen on coming here alone, but when we made the plan of coming with my grandfathers, it took me a few days to realize that coming with them was really important, because this time my time here was quite domestic. I'm staying in a flat, not in a guest house. So, there's things to be taken care of in the house, making sure the meals are happening on time, just the basics. And there are conversations. So when I was here last year, it was very, very quiet because I didn't know so many people here and I wouldn't talk to a lot of people, and my time in silence really, really helped me. But this time, I would go back home from the Samadhi and my grandparents would be there. My grandfathers would be there. And we would talk. And there was constant communication throughout the day, which is something I wasn't so keen on. But I knew that if this is the setting, then of course conversation will happen. And then I realized that maybe it was important for me to come here with them, because this is not an individual journey, this is a collective one that all three of us are having together. My grandfather, who just lost his wife in January, it was important for him to come here for his healing. My other grandfather, who has felt a disconnect in his sadhana and he wants to get it back. So maybe this time was important for him in that way. And every day we learn from each other. Like he will tell me how he's feeling and I will tell him how I'm feeling. And I will hear his stories from all those years ago and it'll somehow affect my life today. And I will give him my inputs and then he will say it has affected his life today. So there's so much exchange that I now learn was necessary. And like I mentioned earlier, domestic. I feel like now it will be easier for me to go back, because the life isn't so drastic and so different.
I have two more questions for you.
Sure.
And we have a few minutes. What will you do? What do you see for your future and your progress in the yoga?
I feel like I have just begun to open up very recently. So seeing what I see for myself in the future is not something I invest too much of my thought in, because I simply like to leave it on her. And I just ask her every day to nudge me in the direction I'm meant to go. I don't know where I'm meant to be. So, seeing myself in a future would mean that I have decided what I would like to be. But it's not my decision to make. So, it's her decision. And I would like, if she'll allow me, to be an instrument for her decisions. And just try to stay as open as I can in every moment, as much as I can. Because, of course, some days it's harder than the others. but I'm sure I'll get there and I'll learn better. And I think that is the aspiration. I think the aspiration is to grow and to be open to growth when it comes to me.
Last question. What was your experience of the Om choir?
Before we began, you'd spoken about how we'll feel the presence, right? The presence does come down. And that's exactly what happened. I very much, especially in the first Om. The first Om, I believe, yesterday was the strongest one. After that, there were a few, I can't explain. But the first one, instantly I felt a presence. It was like magical, truly magical. Even with the Om choir that I'd experienced for the first time with you, I think about 6, 7, maybe longer, 7, 8 years ago at the Park Guest House.
Oh, with the children?
Yeah.
Yes.
There were like two girls who fainted that day. One girl who started crying. And that was also one of the first times I didn't question. Because on a normal day, I would see people faint and be like, oh my God, like, please help her. But in that moment, it made sense why they fainted. It made sense why one girl was crying and she couldn't stop. Because there was such a clear, stronger, greater, much greater presence than the rest, all of us combined, that was in the room with us. So, of course, when a strong presence comes down, different people react differently. And for some people, it's an opening. Maybe she had to let out whatever was suppressed for all of this. And I didn't question it for the first time. I was also like around, I think 17, 18 that time. So that was a very beautiful experience because to not question is also liberating.
Thank you so much. It has been a wonderful, wonderful meeting.
I'm so happy that we got to have this conversation.
Thank you.
Yes, me too.
Namaste. Namaste all. Namaste.